That's fine, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today just is going to be on interfaces and enum. Enum. I've not mentioned the term enum before. This should be the first. And then the static keyword that I've been using says I'll talk about it today. So interfaces, enum, and static keyword. One second. So these three things, and then I'll do a brief introduction to um, collections framework in Java. Alright, so basically, interfaces is similar to abstract class. And if you remember what abstract class is, what I talked about last time about abstract class. So abstract class gives us the ability to create classes and create methods, methods that have body. But also we can do methods that don't have body, if you guys remember, and I believe you do. So to do that, for methods that do not have body, we create it by using the which keyword. Any of you, can you go?
Avoid.
Ah, no, use abstract keyword.
Abstract. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. So use abstract keyword when doing the method signature, as when writing the method detail on top. So use the abstract keyword to tell it that this method is going to be an abstract method under the abstract class, and the body will be defined whenever another class extends that particular abstract class. So interface, now the difference is that in interface, most of the time when it's used, that's not to say it cannot be done otherwise, but 90% or 95% of the time when we've been using interfaces, you are basically going to be defining it, creating the interface. But then this interface now will not have any body for all of the methods at all. So interface is more like abstract class, but now all of the things you'll be creating, all of the methods, all of them, we have no body attached to them. That is not to say that it is not possible to create an interface that has a method that has body. But most of the time, if not all of the time, you will not be using the ability of creating the body for all of the methods. So so all of throughout our session, we're going to be using interface, and the methods are not going to be defined. The body will not be there, basically. So I'll be sharing my screen quickly. Hello, Amarachi, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good
Yeah,
afternoon, everybody.
good afternoon.
So sorry I'm late.
Ah, try to be earlier next time. Try to be earlier next time. Um, interface. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
Oh.
Give me one second. What is this? What am I doing? It's pattern. Okay, let me just rename it. I would call it interface example. All right. So basically, in so to let me delete this. Let's just start from how to create interface. Let me delete this. So I'll be deleting this. So to create an interface in our IntelliJ, to create an interface, you right click the package where you want to create. Is someone there? Okay. Okay, no well. So to create an interface, basically, you the normal way you do create a class. That's how you create an interface. But there's an exception. So if you see the way I'm going, you right click the package, then go to new, which is normal way. Then you select Java class. I believe this is how you guys have been doing it. So the comma there now is that you wouldn't, I'm sure you used to see all of these options here. You used to see class, interface, enum, and annotation. So what we need is not class. This class is one you've been using to create all of your classes. What you need is this second one, the interface. So you just select it, then you give it the name. Let's say example interface. This is what I call it. So hit enter, and basically it creates the interface for you. Now, if you observe, let me zoom it in or out. Now, if you observe, when you create class, it normally has public class, then the class name. For interface, it has public interface, then the interface name. So I was saying that interface, the difference between interface and abstract class is that interface works such that, in abstract class, it gives you the ability to create methods. Some of the methods may have body, some of them may not have body. But in interface, in fact, in programming, the interface is more used than abstract class. Most of the time, you won't even see them make use of abstract class, although it's still being used. But if you are to ration it, interface is used like 80%, then abstract class is the other 20% of the time. So the idea is remember what I told you about when to use abstraction. When I say abstraction, I mean interface. I mean abstract class. So abstraction, which is one of the uh, so let me mention this. There are four pillars of object-oriented programming. I don't know if I've mentioned this before. So one of them is in inheritance. What is it? So inheritance. The other one is abstraction, and the other one is
Polymerism.
polymorphism, exactly. Polymorphism. And can anyone guess the last one?
Encapsulation.
Yeah, encapsulation.
Encapsulation.
Yes. So encapsulation basically is that one. All this one you're seeing public, private. So that's what's called encapsulation. I want a particular field or method to be accessible whenever whenever the this is trying to access basically. Remember that private you can only use it when you're working within that class, but in public you can use it when you're in another class. So that's for encapsulation. Polymorphism is that one I told you about, overriding and overloading. Then inheritance is whenever you're inheriting from a superclass or parent class. Now abstraction. Abstraction is this one. Anytime you hear of abstract class or interface, what they do is abstraction. So whenever you think of them that those methods that are being created, but they don't have body, basically. So abstract class is one way to achieve abstraction. Polymorphism interface is the other way. So basically, this is how as this thing is now, I've created my interface, but this is not all. Usually, the you have to give it the method signature. When I say method signature, I'm talking about public. Let's say this time we are returning void. That's nothing. It's not returning anything. Let's say method one. So basically, I've created a method in this interface. This is all I need. This is just all I need when creating a method in interface. And remember, Remember a particular thing that is peculiar to abstract classes, that you cannot use them directly to create an object. So a class must have to inherit abstract class. Then that class that inherited it, which is a concrete class, I'm sure you remember that one, will be the one that will um, be used to create objects. The same thing happens for interface. The same thing because of that same reason of abstraction. And when I say abstraction, the method was created, but it doesn't have any body. So if I want to create an object out of this thing now, I cannot because it doesn't have any behavior. When I say behavior, I mean anytime you see all those opening and closing parentheses, you see it's already complaining because this is an interface and it's not expecting a body. But Java has a way to treat this thing to give it a body. But that, in most of the cases, would not be used. That idea of creating interface that has a body, a method that has a body, interface method that has a body. It's possible, but most of the time you would not be needing it. Now, because of the fact that we need to create, can anyone suggest to me what public does in all public, the public keyword you're saying? Okay, like I mentioned earlier, let's not waste too much time on this.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
the public keyword allows you to access whatever is inside the method from any other classes.
Exactly. Method or field variable. Yeah. So now, because in interface as well as abstract class, we must we must pass it down to another concrete class. From which the concrete class we create an object. You don't create straight up object from an interface. So you must uh, inherit it by into another subclass before you create object out of it. So Java is now telling you that there's actually no need of you specifying this public here. And in fact, you can't. Now this is one difference between interface and abstract class. Because this is an interface, and basically all of the method, the body are not defined, and they must be they must be inherited by a class before we can create object. Java is telling you that because of that, every method, every method in interface is always public. It can be private. Every method in interface is always public. Okay, just take that. Just note that. Maybe it doesn't make full sense now, but note that every method in interface is always public. If you've been coding in IntelliJ, if you see all these ones that are faint like this, it means they've not been used, or they are simply redundant. Meaning that if I remove a redundant, means that if I remove it, everything is still very fine. So I've removed that one now. If you look at the color it was before, if you look at this color now, it's faint, meaning that it's redundant. If I highlight over this thing and look at the solution intelligence telling me that modifier public is redundant for interface members, and therefore I could go ahead to remove it basically. So I've removed it now. So every method in interface is always public. It can never be private. They're usually not private. Any questions so far? Go ahead.
The method is also faint. Does it mean it's redundant too?
Yeah, remember
Method.
I said two things before. That when it's faint, it could mean that it is redundant, meaning that if you remove it, life is still good. Or you've not used this method before. If in the future I make use of this method now, the color would change. But that public that was there will still be there. The code will run fine without yes. So this one that is faint here means that it has not been used before. So if you look here, it's telling you method one is never used. So you just in the future when we make use of this, we would come back and see that the color must have changed. So this is it for interface. Another thing about it,
This
okay,
the method one. Where did you get that from? Or you just what does that method one means?
now I created it myself. I could have did just method name now. Do you
Okay.
remember? I could have called it
Okay.
anything. You could have called
Okay.
it Bukola. My life is too good. It's just a method name. Nothing special about it.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. But only that if you want to make use of it in the future, you go by the name that you gave to it. Yeah. Yeah, it's gone back to friends. Yeah. Okay, so I will just um, keep this here. And the other thing interface does for us is, apart from we having the ability to create the method, and of course I said they don't have body usually. You can also create field variables. Let's say int k equals to 2. Interface gives us the ability to create field variables. Now, if in the future, or just for demonstration purpose, but I told you that we're never going to make use of this method that has a body, but just to show you that this is actually in Java. If you want to create a method that has a body, you must use you have to use this keyword now default. Now Java has plenty keywords with many different functions. Now default is one of them. Now you can, after you've said default, then go ahead and create a method like you would normally. Let's say another method. So with this now, it's not complaining. I've opened my parentheses and life is good. It's not complaining again. But here, if I went ahead to put this parenthesis now, it's complaining. But because I have this default keyword telling it that you should treat this that as though a method is being attached to it. And of course, I'm giving it a body, a method body. Now I'm giving it a method body. So, but remember, interface, they don't accept method body. But if you must have to, you have to use this keyword, the default keyword. And in many cases, you shouldn't give method body, at least not for our session. So since you've used this default keyword, you can go ahead and say anything you want to say inside, do anything you want to do inside the printing a message, anything basically. Yeah. So this default keyword you're seeing here gives us the ability to create a method body. So this one just for noting. That's all. Any further questions before we continue? Please give me 1 second. Any questions? Oh, we are good. Are you guys there?
No questions, sir.
Okay, okay. Is to create an interface. And I told you cannot use an interface to create your object, basically. So to do that, you must have to extend it the way we've always done in our distance. So let's say I want to create a class that does what? Let me call this accepts interface. So this is my class now, accepts interface. You know, normally if you want to carry all the properties of a class, that's parent class or base class, into another one, what we normally would do is to use the extends keyword. This is for class now. But for interface, what you use is implements keyword and not extends. So that's just the difference. For class, use extends. For interface, we use implements. Now, what interface do we want to implement? Example interface. Now, remember that thing in abstract class that if it has abstract methods, by abstract method I mean those methods that don't have body. Remember that thing that if we extend a class, the abstract class, and we don't override all of the methods, it complains. Now it's the same with interface. Now remember I told you two of them are used to achieve abstraction. And abstraction I told you are those methods that don't have body. Now this is complain because it needs us to carry all of those methods that we defined in the body and bring them down here. Now I'm overriding the two of them. Those two methods are now here. Because they were not implemented here, that's this one, and there are two of them basically. So this one and this one, the two of them have been brought down here. And that's this vocal and another method you're seeing here. They've been brought down here. And observe that this one didn't follow. Observe that this one didn't follow. Just like you wouldn't define a method without with a body and interface. It does in many cases. You would also hardly have a scenario where you have to do this field variable like I've done here. You would hardly. But I'm just doing this here just for you to give me a second. I'm just doing this one here just for you to know that it's actually possible to instantiate a field variable here. And if you want to use it, later, okay, we'll get to that. You could use it actually. But these two methods, they must be overridden in the class that is implementing it. If you remove one, it will complain. Okay, that's the default one. Give me a second. If you remove this one, let's see. Is this one that should complain? If you remove this one, it will complain. Now observe the difference. I removed this one, it didn't complain. And the reason is because I already gave it a body. So anytime I make use of this nigger here, this accepts interface, and I call that that method that I just removed, that's another method that's in this class, and I try to make use of it, it will go and pick the actions that I've specified here. That's these default actions basically that I've defined with the default keyword. These default actions I created here, it will go and use the thing that I've created in this block of code basically. But for this particular one that I don't have anybody attached to it, I must do justice to that. So I can actually keep this one, but if I remove this particular one, it would complain. Any questions so far?
Got lost when you got to this accept interface. I got out of the network. Did you open another interface?
Okay, I created a class. Remember I told you, yes. Remember I told you you cannot create an object from an interface. Yes. You must have to implement it in a class. Remember I told you that implement is just the keyword to do for interface. But for classes, you use what? Extends. So that's just the difference. You're telling Java that what you want to do is to what? Bring down an interface. But for class, use extends to bring down the class. Is it clear?
It is.
Okay. And I was also saying that for all those ones that I don't have body attached to them, like this one, if I remove it, it would complain. But body, if I remove this one, it's still fine. It will just default to that body, the action I've specified in the body. So from this class now, I can play around and I can create an object out of this particular class as I want. It's actually possible for me to, let me create the object inside here. Let me create my object inside here. Let's say, okay, okay. So the object of what? Accept interface. Let's say accept new accept interface. Yeah. So basically, this is I just created the object. Now, if I want to make use of that, what's this called? Okay, that field variable I specified. If I want to make use of it, give me a second. Let me even be sure. Okay, yeah, I called it k. Now this is how it behaves for interface. That I want to make use of this field variable now. Remember, observe that it didn't appear here. And I told you for most of the time, you will not be making use of that field variable in our interface. To make use of it, because it didn't come down to our class, we would have to go like the interface, then take it from here. Okay. So the IntelliJ is already suggesting to me that the value I gave it to it is 3. And if I go here, it's 3 actually. Now, if I needed that variable, this is how you do it. That's interface example.k. So if I print this, what would be on my terminal would be 3. But I'm not going to joke and work with that. But this is just for you to know that it's possible to do all of those things. So what I needed to know that is that interface takes body and takes method that do not have body. Just take that away for today. And to create an object out of an interface, we would have to implement it in a class first, and then create an object out of that class. So this is our object basically. This is the object reference here. Accept interface, the name here. Observe that I always create an object inside this main. This is not this is just for demo purpose. Please don't follow what I'm writing. You can actually create objects anywhere. You can create objects anywhere. Even here as I am now, I can create objects anywhere. Not they look say they do them inside this our public static main. It's not compulsory. I'm just doing it for the sake. So I just created another object here called A.
Sorry. So when I was in my assignment, so I came across this accept interface, new interface. I came up and I was wondering what it means. So it's an object in a class. But this new that you put here, is it like regular, like a term that has to be used?
Yes.
I don't
Whenever
understand what these three things written this accept interface written 3 times. I don't understand it.
no. Okay. This 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3.
Yes,
Okay.
and three.
Okay. Okay, this is the thing. This is the class name that I want to use to create my object. This is the object's name. This particular name, just like we called that method name Bukola, I can decide to call this object anything. Normally, objects or variables, they go with camel casing, but it's a convention to go with the name that has been specified here for our object's name. But because they normally start with small letter, I change it. This is normally changed to A. And IntelliJ observed that this is a convention, and therefore it suggests it to you. So as I'm typing now, this is a suggestion. This one down is another suggestion. So I can decide to go with it, or I can decide to maybe just leave it at AC. This one is just name. Then this other one is the constructor. The constructor that is normally used. Many of the time, you may see the constructor that is just open and close brackets. And that's because I didn't specify a constructor that takes in a parameter. If I create my constructor now, I'm creating my constructor, public accept interface, and let's say this is my constructor, and it takes in let's say string name. Okay, let me leave it at only name, and it takes in only name. Are you now seeing that this thing is complaining? Remember, I told you constructor is that method that runs anytime an object is created. So this one here basically is our constructor. It's mimicking what we've defined here. Now, because I've told it that anytime I'm creating my object, I must give it one parameter called name. Now I'm trying to create an object and I'm not giving it any parameter, so it's complaining. Now, if you look, you say expected one argument, but found zero. Found zero, meaning that I didn't give it at all. But it's expecting one, and that one here, that one is talking about is this thing. So this one you're seeing on this right-hand side basically is a pattern that aligns with what I've said my constructor to be. Now, if I remove everything here, life will be good. If I go down now, it won't complain again. Are you seeing it? It's not complaining again. But even if I went ahead and removed this thing, I told you that underground IntelliJ will put it for us. It will put it for us. Is this clear? Is Bukola there?
Yes.
Yeah. So if I decide that I'm not going to mention anything for my constructor, IntelliJ will supply it for us when the program is executed. But if I went ahead and told it that even if I manually explicitly type out the constructor like this, it's still the same thing that IntelliJ would have done for us. But if I needed to actually take in something, you would have to type it out in full yourself. So for this case, we are just taking one argument. Now I'm trying to create my constructor and I'm not giving it any argument. So for this thing to compile well, because it's also of type string and not any other data type, not float, not objects, not double, I would also have to specify object of, let's say, Chika, the name. Now everything is fine. If you look, this thing is telling us, is hinting to us that this thing is actually standing for what we've called it here. What did we call it here? Name. And now it's telling us that this thing you gave it here is mapping to this variable name. Is this clear? Then on this other side, basically that this left hand one is the object we're creating. Normally is what we call our constructor or class. Then this one is just the variable name. You can give it anything. Then you must have to use this new keyword to create a new object, basically. You must use this keyword to create a new object. Remember I told you that class is just a blueprint, a template. Now we need now to actually create a workable instance of that class, which is called object. This is how you create it, basically, this whole line now. Is that clear? Any other questions so far? All right. So okay, the other thing I wanted to mention is what's called enum. If you look in the chart, I dropped it here. ENUM, enum. So enum is used to create those things which normally does not change through the life of the program. Now it's possible. Think of it like when you need people to fill a form, and then you're requesting for the agenda. Those options that normally drop down, they can be an example of enum. So if you ask people the agenda, say male or female, so those could be an enum. Now let's create one, and to do that, remember you created the interface. You selected interface. Now for enum, which is the third one you're seeing here on my screen, I would call it. Let's just call it gender. Let's call it gender. Now it's possible that some persons when filling the form, you want the representation of the character they pass in to be the center, the same in a particular manner. So you want all of them to be capitalized. You want all of them to be in lowercase. Now, but some persons can be funny and type it something like this. Let's say male. This kind of thing now. Just mistakes basically, or you see them type female. So the idea is that we want it to be represented in a particular manner. So you work with that one format. So enum gives us the ability. So for example, I want everything to be of this nature, name, all capitalized throughout. And now for the other gender, female, I can decide to make it a small letter, and it's still fine. But I will change it to all caps. So basically, if we are suggesting to them to fill a form, these two things here will be the options that will be displayed to them. So they will have that luxury to make mistakes when filling the form or anything, basically. So it's more like a restriction that you must have to obey this rule of all caps that I've defined here. Now, to use enum is actually not a broad concept. To use it, all you need to do is just to what do we call our enum class? We call it gender. Let's say, for example, I want to print it on my terminal. So I could do. Okay, let me remove this. Let me remove this thing here. So it costs something to come up here, and I don't want it to be a problem for now. Here, I'll remove this. I'll remove this as well. So to print, for example, the gender of male, to access that particular option, what we do is to type it this way, gender, then dot. And the two options that normally would come up are the ones we've defined in the needs, the male and female. Let's say we want to know the female, to make use of the female option. So if you come here, you can see that these are the two options we have. Now this thing is purple because I've made use of it. And by making use of it, what I mean is that I've called it here, as you can see here. If you go back, this one is still faint because I've not made use of it. So it's just not a deep concept. Just understand it the way you've seen it here. It gives us you basically list out all the options you need this enum to carry. And then to make use of it, you go with the way I represented it here. You type in the enum class name, and then the option you need for it. If for example I wanted the male one, you just fill it out as you're seeing here. If you go here, it should be purple now, and this other one will turn to faint very soon. So any questions so far?
This kind of class where you created the
Sorry?
Can you go back to the class where you created the enum?
Yeah, that's where it was. You mean this one?
Place now, you said
This
when
one?
we want to use enum. No, the class itself.
Okay.
So when we want to create the enum in the class,
Yeah,
we will put gender and male.
that's all. You're not creating anything, you're using
That's
it.
all.
That's all, yes.
So if I put gender and male, it will also represent for a female filling the form.
No. Now, okay, the form thing is just an example I used. Now, if the person filled it, what we could do what we could do is to do the if statement. Let's say this thing takes in, let's say it takes in a norm of type gender. Let's say gender. Of course, this was complain because I didn't tell it that it's taking a parameter. But let's assume that this is a parameter here. Now, what I could do to check what the person filled in the form is to use if statements. If what? If what? Gender dot equals what? Then do whatever you want to do here. Now, this dot equals, we've not gotten to that. Wait till you spray. This dot equals, we've not gotten to that point. But what I'm trying to establish now is to check what this person has filled in the form. Then we are trying to check what the person has filled in the form basically. Then we are checking that if it is female, do something. Else do what? Do another thing. Do something. All right. Let me copy this. Because this is complaining now, I'll go back to my interface. Just so life is good, I would put it up. Which one? I'll put it here. So basically, when the form is filled, it takes in the parameter that was filled in will come in here. Then I will now check, did this person fill the option of female? Do something. Else, you do the other thing. And the other option is for male, basically. Is it okay?
Yes, I get it.
Any other questions? Amarachi. Ada, you came late. I'm not to hear your voice again. And Jennifer. Are we okay?
I'm okay. Yes, no question.
There are some call.
No questions, sir.
Okay, that's fine. So the last thing we're going to be talking about is this static keyword we've been using ever since. So today I just want to let's talk about it. So to make use, you are seeing this object. I called it the object called accept interface. To make use of it, to make use of the methods that are inside of it, you observe that we usually create an instance. And when I say instance, I mean an object out of the class, and then do AC dot whatever method that is inside it. Abi dot SA Bukola. So what we usually do is to create an object before we can make use of the method that inside of it. For instance, this one you're seeing here, Bukola, right? Now, with static keyword, it gives us the ability to make use of those methods even without creating objects. So that's what static does basically. That's what it does. That's just all it does. The ability to make use of the methods that are inside of a class without method and field variables, without creating an instance out of that class first. So if, for example, I have this one is already you just note that because this one has static doesn't mean you can call this method in another class. This is a special type of method. This is where the program is instantiated and starts running. This particular one, PSVM, public static void main. Then these other ones, they can be made static. But I want to have a different one to demonstrate what the static does for us. Let's say static. This one returns. Let's say it returns Boolean, and let's say test static is the method name. Static. let's say return true, because we are returning Boolean. Now you see that if I try to access this, okay, let me create another class first. Let's create a static, what should I call it? Test static class. You don't put space when creating a class name. So you remember. So let's call this one test static class. Now I want to, and okay, let's say PSVM. Let's say I want to what? This accept interface. Let's say I want to call this method you're seeing here that doesn't have the static keyword to it, or I want to call this method bookcaller that doesn't have the static keywords to it. Let's try to access it by doing accept interface dot book dot what? Bookcaller. See, it's complaining. This one is a class, but and we're trying to access its method. But to make use of this, it's complaining, as you can see here. Let me zoom it out for a bit. Or in. Alright. Now, if I want to successfully make use of this guy here, what I must have to do is to create an object first. Let me call this. I could call it anything, bookcaller. Then type in new, and then this. That's all. So I've created an object out of that class. So what I must do to make use of method bookcaller that doesn't have a static keyword, or another method that which does not also have a static keyword, what I must do is use the object dot bookcaller, and life is good. You can see that here. Now, if I want to let's go to this one we define to be static. Let's try to access this test static without creating an use of this object we created here. If I make use of the object j dot test static, you can see it's not coming up. Okay, it came up. You can actually make use of it either without or with or without object instance. But what I also do is to make use of that particular method without even creating object out of it. So even if I deleted this, it's still okay. If I clean everything here, okay, let me all of it out. It's still fine. It's still fine. To Boolean, I could decide that I want to, let's say, return value. I can decide I want to store it. So the value that I returned, I'm storing it here now. Okay, that's fine. If I wanted, I could go ahead and print it out on my terminal. How's it sound? Is it okay now? Is it better? Can you hear me?
Getting worse.
It's getting worse. What does it sound like? Let me understand.
Okay, now.
It's okay now?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, you guys grab what I said last about the static keyword.
No, sir.
Okay, I'll go over it again. Let me comment this out and then uncomment everything here. Or let me delete it and go over it again. If we go to this our class here, to make use of a method that has been defined in a class, what do we normally do? First, what we will do is to create an object out of the class first. You give it a name, I'll call it H, and then the new word, the new keyword, and then every other thing that comes from it. And then do what? Which method do we need? Let's say we will need this another method defined here. What we will do is H dot another method, and then do whatever we wanted to do. Let me not use this particular method. Let me use H dot. Okay, let me still stick to Bukola. Okay. Okay. Sure, you can see this one now. First of all, I created an instance object, and then with that instance object, because this has become an object basically that was created out of this class. Now I was able to access the methods that are present inside of this class. This method, the static method, and the test static method, the another method, the Bukola method, all of these methods that are created inside of there. With this particular object that I've created, I can access all of them. Let me type in it out. Dot what? What's the other option? Dot, because this one is this one is enum, so you have to pass in type enum as well. Now, what's the other object that's inside of here? The other one is what? I think that should be all. Remember that PSVM is not one of them. PSVM is which one? Okay, PSVM is where our program is instantiated and made to run. Okay, now I have one more object, test static. I didn't include that, so I could do h.test static. So I'm able to access all of my objects and life is good. Now let's try to access this object. Let's delete everything here, or let me comment it, or let me leave it, whichever is best for you guys, and try to access this object from the class without creating an instance. Let's attempt by doing accept object dot Bukola. It was not even suggesting to me in the first place, but I typed it in once. I want to see what it will tell me. I want to accept this method straight up without creating an object, as we've seen here for H. I created H first before I was able to do H dot the method name follows. H dot the method name follows. H dot the method name follows. Now I'm trying to see if it's possible for me to access that method straight up without even creating object. Now I attempted that by calling the class name to see if it worked. Then call the method, and it didn't work. Okay, this is the thing. There are two ways we could access all of these methods that have been created inside this class you're seeing here. This Bukola, this another name, this test static. The two ways is for us to create object first and call the method with the dot operator. Call the method name with the dot operator. Call the method name with the dot operator. The other way is to call the is to attempt to call the method straight up without even creating an object. Now you can see it's complaining because this Bukola you're seeing here, because Bukola does not have the static keyword. Static means that I can call that method without creating an object first. Bukola does not have the static keyword, but test static, does it have? Yes. So let's attempt to call it. Yes. Now we're successful. It's not complaining. There's no red underlining here. It means that it's fine, and that's simply because I have this static keyword attached to it. Static means that it is there. It is just there and doesn't change, and you don't have to create an object first to make use of it. Is this clear? Or do you want to look at it after now for better understanding? Abi, you've gone. Which one? Have you all gone?
So no, for
Okay, you
I
take a
think we'll
look
have
at
to
it
look
again.
at it later.
Okay, that's fine. The other person is in call. Are they there?
Yeah, we'll have to look at it later.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, that should be all for today. That will be all for today. And then, do you not have any question? Or should we end? I'm done. You can end, right?
Sorry, the dot operator, the H dot operator, what's the work of it?
Okay, the work is to access the methods that are defined inside the class. Not only methods, the field variables as well. If I create a field variable here, and this static applies also to field variables. If, for example, I had int age equal to 20, I could have it here in my field variable, and then I come here to, and I attempt to accept interface dot age age. You see, it's complain. Let's say I want to sorry. Let's say I want to store it somewhere. Let's say this is get age. Let's say this get age is supposed to be holding the age from this class. It's complaining. But if I change it to, okay, before attempting what I was going to say. But if I did, let's say int, uh, uh, let me just call this get a, then the object I created here, I could do h dot age, and then to get that age successfully fine. And I'm able to do this magic because I created an object first. But what I'm trying to do here now is to access it without creating an object. But this can be made possible if I went to the front of this guy, just like you can see for this one here. If I if I this static keyword I put here, if I went ahead and also put it here, static, and if you go back, also note that I can decide to put public here or to make it private. If I make it private, I don't. Okay, I'm not talking about encapsulation now. If I make it private, it would complain in front. But let's say, for example, I make it public. Let's say I leave it at public. This is a field variable. I can decide to still remove it. But let's leave it this way now. If I come back here, this should stop complaining, as you can see. And that's because I told it that you don't have to create an object first before you can access it. If I remove this static keyword, it will complain. It would complain here. But if I put it, it would not. So I'll drop the file so you take a look at it. You can always message me if you have any questions. Are we fine?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So the next class will be on Monday. Please try to be earlier than you were today, all of you. Yeah, because I think you always come on time.
Okay, sir.
The rest, please try to be earlier. So I'll drop everything and as well the assignments will drop as well. All right. Happy
Okay.
weekend.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Happy
Bye.
weekend. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye.